Hi everybody, and welcome to the Luxe Lens. We're going to be taking a look at achieving a light and airy effect in Adobe Lightroom. Getting the effect you want is a simple process if you know what you're doing and have all the right tools to do it. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate the steps to creating these images. White balance is one of the more important elements in achieving this look. We want our whites to be white. There are various easy ways to properly adjust white balance. It can be adjusted using automated settings, using the color picker, using preset tools, which I'll demonstrate shortly, and the slightly more labor-intensive temperature and tint sliders in your basics panel. If we click the white balance drop menu, you'll be given a few options depending on whether you're working in RAW format or not. If you are, then you'll be given options for tungsten, cloudy, daylight, shade, and other variables that might be applicable to your image. If you're working in JPEG, then the options will be limited to as shot, auto, and custom. The auto white balance option in Lightroom is an effective way of getting a decent white balance, but sometimes it's going to miss the mark just a little bit. In that case, you can pick up the color picker tool and try to find a middle gray color somewhere in the image, and then just click on that. If the color doesn't look quite right, you can continue picking up the tool and just try selecting different spaces with different color tones until you get the coloring that you would like. If you're working with the ColorMade Digifilm Lumina collection, you can open up those presets and you'll find some one-click white balance options. The auto setting works as the default safe bet white balance. But you also have all these other settings that you can pick from depending on the circumstances that your picture was taken in. Once your white balance is adjusted, you'll want to turn to exposure. Exposure of any given image can vary a lot, depending on the conditions you were shooting under and the settings on your camera. The trick to adjusting your exposure is not overdoing it. Lots of people who want to give a photo a light and airy look will crank up the exposure until the image is totally blown out to white. This is when your image starts losing information and becomes not only hard on the eyes, but also just a really boring image because there isn't that much to look at anymore. Now that being said, some photos will need more of an adjustment to exposure than others, which is why it's good to adjust your exposure setting manually. However, it's never a bad idea to select the automatic adjustment setting and take it from there. This will give you a kind of baseline to work from. As a general rule, it's a good idea not to take your exposure beyond 1, but keeping it somewhere between 0.2 and 0.6. This will vary from photo to photo and your own personal taste, but generally speaking, the key to adjusting exposure is going to be moderation. If you want to make the exposure adjustment a one-click process, you can use a preset like in the ColorMade Lensman toolkit. The collection comes with a large selection of adjustment effects, temperature, contrast, highlight, shadows, and many more. But we're looking at exposure right now where we have multiple options in what kind of exposure we would like. This is a quick, simple way to get a good exposure without having to worry about blowing out the image because the adjustments have been pre-calculated for you. So now that the white balance and exposure have been adjusted, those have set up the launching pad for finishing the effect. So if we go to our preset collections, we can open up light and airy portraits, since that's exactly what we're trying to make here, and we'll decide what style of light and airy we would like. Now there's actually a lot of work being done for us with just one click, and that's because we're using presets that make anywhere from 30 to 80 adjustments automatically, making a very labor-intensive project a very quick and simple process. Airy Clean, Cotton Candy, Gold Coast, Portrait Glow, all these work really well with this image, depending on what you're going for. These presets are designed not to impede upon the image's natural tones, but to enhance them in a particular way, so they kind of play on what's already there. Once we've selected the general look of the project, we can go over to our light and airy adjustment tool collection. Here we can select individual adjustments that we might like to make. We can fine-tune some adjustments like add a bit of color by selecting Color Booster. And as we just kind of move our cursor over these adjustments, it will give us a preview of the effect. So as we go, we can just pick whatever looks good, knowing that we can undo or alter any of the effects that we select. Now, Detail's highlight increase will also work nice here. If you have a look that you're going for that just isn't quite where you want it to be, another little trick that you can use for that light and airy look is to go ahead and pull up your shadows and increase your highlights. You can do this using the sliders in your basic panel, or you can use one of these shadow highlight tools in preset collections, like in the light and airy adjustment tools where we are now. But also remember that you can do both. Sometimes we can forget that we're working with presets, and we still have full control over all of those adjustments in the adjustment panel. Detail shadows lifted could also be helpful here. If you'd like to add softness to the image, something that subtly takes those hard edges and color tones down a mark, applying detail softening will do that for you. And finally, I like adding a little vignette to images like this, just because it brings it into focus a bit and emphasizes the glowing subject in the center. Okay, now one last thing. When it comes to detailing particular sections in a photograph, don't forget your brushes or local adjustment tools. These tools are one of many reasons why Lightroom is such a successful program. They don't work the way that Photoshop brushes do. They actually function more the same way that presets do or any other slider adjustment, but the brush tool lets you paint onto the image where you'd like those adjustments to apply. So this allows for incredible detailing work to be done to images, and can be especially beneficial if you're wanting to add additional glow to a dress or whiten up a smile. So for example, you can see on the dress here there's a fairly ornate design to it, but that design kind of bleeds into the dress with all the similar color tones. But if we select the Pop the Highlights brush, you can go over that part of the dress, and then the design itself has a bit of a glow. Now, something I like to do with these brushes is to take a color cooling brush and just touch on some of these shadow areas. And once I've done that, I'll select a new brush. And with that, I'm going to add some color where the light is focused. And remember that you can come over to the adjustment sliders and you can either increase or decrease the effect however you'd like. Now, we applied that softness adjustment earlier, which I really like on the subject, and the vignette as well, which I like around the border. But let's add some contrast and clarity to that middle ground between the subject and the vignette using the adjustment brush. So there are some tips and tricks for using presets, brushes, and manual adjustments to get that light and airy effect in your photography. Very easy and very fun to do with any of the light and airy collections. I hope this was helpful. Bye now.